And we are back, 347-327-9849. If you'd like to join the program, Chuck Morse speaks, 347-327-9849. Let me welcome aboard David Pakman. He is a progressive radio talk show host, online and terrestrial radio. He's out in Western Massachusetts. David, thanks for joining me this afternoon.
Oh, thanks for having me.
David, give me a thumbnail observation with regard to specifically the debate last night between the two vice presidential nominees.
Well, the debate was fascinating. It was a complete turnaround from what we saw in the first presidential debate. Joe Biden came out completely opposite what President Obama did. Instead of kind of standing by, grimacing, looking down at his podium every time his opponent told a lie, Joe Biden kind of instant fact-checking Paul Ryan in a way that I can't remember happening in a major presidential or VP debate in the last 20 years.
Well, I think that it certainly was an aggressive debate on both sides, and I think that Biden really jumped ugly on Ryan, and Ryan was not.
I disagree with you more.
Okay, but Ryan, you're right. That's my opinion. And with the smirks and the giggles and the snorts, and Ryan was not up to it. He didn't really. He was just too focused on, technical things and issues. He didn't really allow himself to be interrupted. Apparently, 89 times. But at the very beginning of the debate...
The thing about that, Chuck, is, we've gotten into this mode where we've had, for years, people claiming from the right, and, Paul Ryan's Tea Party supporting ilk saying the president's Kenyan, Muslim, baby-killing, gay, communist, socialist, Marxist radical who hates America. And all of a sudden, those on the right are saying, listen, Joe Biden was rude for laughing. It's just not going to fly. It's nonsense. People realize Paul Ryan was telling lies. He even resurrected the death panel lie of the year. And Joe Biden said, these ideas don't warrant respect. These ideas are ridiculous, and I'm going to laugh, and I'm going to tell you why. I completely disagree with you on my view here.
Well, look, David, this is a tough campaign, and there's a lot of nastiness on both sides. Mitt Romney's been called a felon, and he's been called responsible for murdering a man's wife and other things. And we can certainly, I don't think you or I want to do that type of stuff. I don't like that. Even though it's out there, I would rather talk about issues specifically. And one of those was that at the very beginning of the discussion, when the issue of the Benghazi attack was brought up,
right?
I think that Biden was not. I don't like to use the word lying, but he certainly said something that is very different than what has now been said by the American State Department and Defense Department, which was that they did understand that this was a terrorist assault within 24 hours of the incident, and that they were notified before the assault by Ambassador Stevens that they needed more security, and he was told flat out that he wouldn't get it. And I think that when Biden brought that up and said, oh, no, we did not know, and we're waiting for an investigation, and that we weren't notified by intelligence. If Ryan had been a little tougher, he would have pointed out that this was not the case, and he didn't. He just sat there and kind of rolled on about in his very kind of mild-mannered, factual way. And it's very difficult for you or I to second guess a situation like that because we're not in it with there's such high stakes. But and I think that Ryan showed himself to be a bit green. He was not. He's early. Biden's been around for 35 years in the U.S. Senate. But I wish he had challenged that, and there were some other things as well.
Yeah, but here's the problem with that. The focus, the little exchange you just referred to, refers to this retrospective view where Romney, Ryan, rightly so, because they aren't the ones who have been in the White House for the last 4 years, a lot of what they have to campaign on is criticizing things that President Obama and or Joe Biden did. Now, when we want to look at the facts, there's a reason that you didn't mention that Paul Ryan didn't get involved in that the way maybe you would have liked him to, which is Paul Ryan is one of the reasons, Paul Ryan's vote is one of the reasons there wasn't more security at the consulate. And remember, we're talking about a consulate here, not an embassy, which a lot of people on the right also seem to be missing. Paul Ryan and fellow Mormon Jason Chaffetz, who was involved in the hearings a couple days ago, they all are being critical that there wasn't enough security. But they voted to prevent the funding from being there to increase security. So they are completely intellectually void on this issue.
Well, David, I think that was brought up by Biden. He pointed that out, and that's true. They did vote against increasing funding for defense and that. But nevertheless, the administration could have still, within their funding and within their function, especially as 9/11 approached, they could have beefed up security, especially when, they had the money, even though there was cutbacks. And especially when Ambassador Stevens...
It's the libertarian right wing that's saying there is no money. This idea of just finding the money, right, essentially printing the money, that's the exact thing that the right is campaigning against. So to say, well, listen, the right has been for 4 years now through the Tea Party and the House Republicans saying we have money for nothing and actually preventing money from being available, say, well, listen, the Democrats could have gone around that and just made the money available. It's bogus.
Look, David, by the way, my guest is David Pakman. He's a talk show host from out in Western Massachusetts. You and I can debate whether or not there should be cutbacks in defense and whether or not there should be cutbacks. Wait a minute, whether or not there should be cutbacks in the State Department or whatever. But the fact is that even with the cutbacks, the State Department has enough personnel and they have enough money that they could have allocated a little extra security in our embassies as 9/11 comes up. But let me ask you something else, because I want to move on. I want to move on to another one of your comments, David.
You're talking about an embassy. This is the exact...
All right, fine, whatever it is, a consulate.
You're
Thank
talking
you.
about an embassy. The incident happened at a consulate. Are you suggesting that there was money lying around?
Thank you for pointing that out. It's not an embassy, it's a consulate. Thank you for pointing it out. It's not an embassy, it's a consulate. 4 men are dead, including the ambassador. Now, David, let me ask you this. You mentioned that somebody associated with Romney is a fellow Mormon. What is that about?
Well, Jason Chaffetz, who is the one of these individuals who is leading this witch hunt to try to point the incident in Benghazi specifically to Barack Obama, when really it's an administrative issue. It's a question of budgets and the State Department and so many other things.
Allocations.
He is very specifically trying to make this an Obama issue.
What does his being a Mormon have to do with it, though, David?
Not. So it's interesting to note that he is also Mormon.
Why is that interesting, David?
Well, it's interesting because when we look at a number of different companies, including my personal contacts at Bain & Company and a number of other places, there is what appears to be a camaraderie and working together that exists within the Mormon faith. And specifically at Bain & Company, my contact...
Would you say Harry Reid is a part of that? He's a Mormon.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Would you say that Democratic Liberal Senate Majority Speaker Harry Reid is a part of this? Do you know he's a Mormon?
No, I wouldn't say he's a part of it. Against federal law for nonprofit religious organizations, numerous emails have been sent out from Mormon organizations in the Mormon Church, implicitly and explicitly suggesting people vote for Mitt Romney. We're also seeing this now. It's carrying on. We just did a story earlier this week that it's happening also in evangelical churches. Incredible how evangelicals, who recently were calling Mormonism a cult, now are saying, don't vote for the Christian Obama, vote for the Mormon Romney. So this is a big deal. We need to be exploring why are these Mormon organizations who don't pay taxes because supposedly they're not political, why are they being allowed to suggest...
Can you give me the name of one of these organizations, David?
I'm sorry?
I said, could you give me the name of a Mormon church organization that is explicitly telling people how to vote?
Yeah, we have the emails documented. We did the story months and months ago. I'd have to research it. I didn't think that was going to come up here.
Yeah, because it's a very serious charge. And if it's true, then I would agree with you. I mean, I was uncomfortable, for example, when the Reverend Jesse Jackson and the Reverend Al Sharpton spoke at churches the Saturday before the election of 2000, telling people to vote for Al Gore. But
I'm no fan of Jesse Jackson or Al Sharpton for reasons totally separate than that. So I'm certainly not the guy to defend them.
Okay, but the point is that it's one thing for someone to advocate indirectly in their synagogue or in their church that they support certain principles and whatnot. That's fair. That's politics. But if they're coming out flat out and saying vote for this person, and they're putting money behind that, then I have a problem with that. It's a very serious
the
accusation.
story is, and I can send it to you. Maybe you'll talk about it on a future show. The story is that Mormon church resources and stationery were used by a Mormon employee. I don't even know what the term is, if they're called employees or pilgrims or what the term is, to send out fundraising materials. So that to me is a pretty clear violation.
No, I mean,
but this
you're
is
onto something, David.
This happens everywhere. I mean, we're constantly
if this is
seeing.
true,
I think that. Imagine we talk about the deficit. Think of how much of the deficit could be resolved if a lot of these churches lost that nonprofit status. It would make a big dent. Unlike Big Bird, which is 0.012% of the national budget, actually eliminating these tax exemptions for churches that are advocating politics would make a big difference for the
Well,
budget.
I agree. I mean, if a church or a synagogue or mosque or any other religious organization is flat out, sending out stationery, as you say, and paying for ads to promote a candidacy, then they should lose their nonprofit status. I agree with that. I just think that it's a very serious charge. I think that you've made the charge in a way that sounds a little vague to me. You've talked about having some. Send me this email, and I would certainly come out with you on it if it's happening, and maybe we could discuss it further. But as far as I know,
the details is it's old news. I mean, this has been going on for so long. We covered it 6 or 8 months ago.
Yeah, but what you're saying is not. You're saying that they implicitly, not explicitly, have advocated certain candidacies, and I think that's okay.
It's a combination of implicit and explicit. Well, I'll send you the information.
Yeah, please. I mean, I want to see the explicit part of it. I think that would be troubling, and I wonder why their tax-exempt status isn't being challenged. If somebody has something like that,
given the war on
why isn't the New York Times writing about this?
Exists that we would be seeing all these churches lose nonprofit status, yet it's not happening.
Well, look, David, I think that if this was what you're saying it is, and again, I'd have to see the evidence. I'm not saying it isn't, but if it was, then I think the New York Times would have this on the front page. I mean, if the Mormon Church is sending out...
This stuff is going on all the time. I mean, do you know that a Bain-controlled company owns a lot of the voting machines that are going to be used? It's a company called Hart Intercivic.
Wait a minute. They
For me, that's a huge story. I don't know if you're familiar with the website
I am
Reddit,
familiar with that story, David.
That was on the front
they don't
page
own
of
the
Reddit.
machines.
100,000 views in one day. New York Times isn't covering it. I don't know that
the
Times isn't covering it. It's not real.
They don't own the machines. They created the machines. They're in the business of building voting machines, and then they sold them to municipalities. So you're actually not right about that. And I don't think there's anything particularly sinister about that. I mean, somebody has to build these machines. They're not controlling the machines. The machines are controlled by local counties and municipalities. They built the machines. If you want to...
saying there is absolutely, for you, when we talk about fair elections and the unalienable ability to cast a ballot and have it count towards the person you want to vote for. For you, it's just of absolutely no importance at all what the history of those machines are and the fact that historically they've fraudulently added votes in a number of different elections. That you're not worried about.
No, that is a serious problem. I just think that I think that is a serious problem, but I think that if there's voter fraud taking place with these machines, it's being because they're manipulated by the people who control those machines, and those machines are controlled by counties and voting and municipalities that control the vote. And yeah, I don't doubt that there's voting fraud, especially when you're dealing with computer voting. It bothers me, and I'm with you on that. It's a big, big subject. But to try to say that whoever manufactured these machines did something, just technically, I mean, it seems a little bit of an out-of-the-box conspiracy theory. But I want to bring up one...
conspiracy theory. It's just that we have to be open to all aspects of this.
Sure. Well, let's investigate and find out if...
voter suppression and election fraud happen on all levels, and we've got to look at those machines, too.
Good. Let's find out if these machines somehow, when they were manufactured, were rigged in such a way that they would come out for Republicans. That's interesting.
Well, that's a non sequitur. That's a known
that's what you're saying.
Debate policy called the non sequitur. We're not saying that when they were manufactured,
yes, you are.
anybody did anything.
That's exactly what you're saying.
The people who built and know those machines happen to be many of them Bain.
Yeah, and what you're saying is that somehow they're still controlling them, even though they create, the manufacturers sold them to a municipality, and that's a huge conspiracy theory. And again, I don't doubt that the people who actually are managing these machines and this probably could go on whether it be a Democratic or a Republican municipality. They very well might manipulate them when you're dealing with a computer click, and that does bother me.
Yeah, I just, again, Chuck, where would they learn how the machines can be manipulated? Obviously, the people who made the machines are the ones who are most expert. So then what you're saying here... I mean, this isn't a broad-stroke conspiracy theory. It's very specific. It's very reasonable to say the people who know the most about the machines happen to be the people who support Mitt Romney. All right.
So then what you're saying now is that the people who manufactured the machines, is a company that was funded by Bain Capital, that they're giving instructions to the counties in terms of how to fix and rig the machines? I mean, has anybody come forward?
I'm not making any claim. What I'm saying
that's what you just said, David.
I'm sorry.
That's what you just said. But I want to move on to another topic, if you don't mind.
Let's move on because this doesn't seem like. I'm saying
thank
one
you.
thing.
Exactly. We'll let the listeners decide, and I hope that if you're right and there is this thing going on, it's investigated.
Sure.
One of the reasons I contacted you today was because I get your daily email, and I like what you do. I mean, you're very slick in terms of how to promote yourself, and you're doing a good program. But I've noticed something in your email that you've repeated a few times that really kind of got under my craw, if you don't mind my saying. And that is your reference to, and it's a nasty comment that might seem like a throwaway to you, but it gets into a basic issue that troubles me. And that is that you've continually made this comment that Mitt Romney is a sociopath and a psychopath.
Right.
Now,
I think it's fair.
Now, let me just tell you why that bothers me, David.
Observed that is in line with sociopathic behavior.
I think that it is fair and appropriate to criticize both candidates based upon what they stand for and the issues, and to even criticize some of their style. But if we're going to get into a discussion about the sanity of candidates and we're going to say, gee, rather than say I don't like this person and I disagree with their politics, I'm just going to make the case that they're not sane, I think that gets into an issue that, I don't know, it kind of scares me because I don't want to have it's a way to marginalize the opponent by saying, don't listen to this person, they're not sane.
Yeah, we have to back up, though. We have to back up a little bit.
Okay.
Is your background in mental health?
Is yours?
Well, I'll tell you
I'm not making any charges about somebody's sanity, David. You are.
Talking with.
You're making the charge that someone is insane. I'm not getting into that. So you're the one that has to tell me where you come from.
The reason I asked Chuck if your background was in mental health is, if it were, you would know that discussing someone's level of sociopathy is not an allegation of insanity. In other words, the same way that everybody is on a spectrum in terms of intelligence, or people are on a spectrum in terms of how tall they are, or how much they weigh, there's a spectrum of sociopathy which just measures how much empathy can you feel for others, right? So nobody has said, listen, on my show, we've not said Mitt Romney is insane. What we discuss is there's a spectrum of sociopathy. Everybody on my show has been tested, actually, to figure out where are we on that spectrum, because it's a pretty interesting thing. It's widely documented. Politicians and CEOs score very high in terms of sociopathic tendencies. And so what we did is we've done a lot of stuff on this. And so reading one line in my email isn't going to give you that information. What we do is we look at information and we say, interesting, Mitt Romney's behavior here, here, and here is indicative of high sociopathy. So it's not an allegation of insanity. It's very calm, rational discussion, bearing in mind that politicians generally tend to be highly sociopathic.
Well, look, Dave, first of all, you asked me what my psychological qualifications are. I'll ask you what are yours. I mean, are you a psychologist? Do you have a background in it?
I'm not, no. So I'll tell you where we got all this information, all the research we've done. My dad is a world-renowned family therapist, psychiatrist, and psychotherapist. He speaks all over the world on these and other issues. His wife is a marriage and family therapist who deals a lot with sociopathy and psychopathy. We've had a number of experts on my program from all over, and these are science people, not political or religion people. These are science people talking about how is sociopathy measured. Let's talk about all these things. So we've done what I think is pretty extensive.
Okay.
And again, we're not making it's not an ad hominem attack. What we're doing is, listen, everybody's on the sociopathy scale. let's discuss. We have open discussions on our show where people don't get yelled at if they make different claims. Let's discuss where do we think Mitt Romney is on that scale, because when he says hello to the same person in a 20-minute meeting 4 times and doesn't remember having met them, that's an indication of narcissism and sociopathy. So we discuss that. That's all it is. It's not an attack.
All right. Well, look, the way it comes across to me is that when you start to not just psychologize someone, but do it in a kind of a throwaway way, as in when you send out an email and say, the sociopathic Mitt Romney, who is having sociopathic, it's kind of a code word that goes back. It's not something that's unique to you, but it is a way of saying or sending out a message that this person is not sane and that we can't trust them and we can't listen to them or anything they have to say.
If other people believe that discussing sociopathy is an allegation of insanity, I can't control other people's misinformation on that topic.
Okay.
We're doing
all I would
those
suggest, that's fine, David,
very,
but
very
I would
popular, and we're bringing up big issues. Mitt Romney's behavior is very, very unusual as a person.
Well, so isn't Barack Obama's. But look, I would suggest to you that to come out with statements like referring to people as sociopaths and psychopaths and all these other things, it might serve better to put in some kind of context and qualification so that people understand that this isn't just a way of saying that this person is crazy. And I think
Chuck, I just spent 10 minutes talking to you about
and
all
you
the
did.
background.
But the point is that's what I get is what I got from you, and that's one of the reasons I've had you on, to hear some of the context, and you've done a good job of putting it in a context. But when I just get this email with this comment, it's something that one of these things that I think we have to be careful about. And by the way, WorldNet Daily has done a good deal of writing on Barack Obama's psychology and his narcissism. And, I suppose that if we want to get into a discussion of people's psyches back and forth, then maybe we'll all end up sitting on a couch somewhere. It kind of gets off the topic.
It may, but certainly, and then you open up another topic by mentioning WorldNet Daily, which is, if we go back into their archives, let's just look at some of the incredible propaganda that's been published there that is far worse than evaluating anybody's sociopathy.
I'd be happy to discuss them. And by the way, I should mention in full disclosure that WorldNet Daily is the publisher of one of my books, The Nazi Connection to Islamic Terrorism.
I'm not surprised.
I don't. Excuse me?
I'm not surprised to hear that. No, I know that they're very interested in book publishing. They have the book imprint that they do. I think it's WND Books. I get pitched their books all the time. So no, I'm not surprised that they're doing books.
Oh yeah, well they have a publishing arm. I think that you're talking about Jerome Corsi, who has done some really wild and woolly stuff. And I agree with you. Some of it is a little off the edge. But I think that I don't really want to either defend or discuss them. They can speak for themselves.
Yeah, no, I'm happy not to. We can move on to other stuff.
Right. You're certainly welcome to have them on your show. And I generally don't like the issue of the birth certificate and whatnot. I avoid that on my show because I think that Barack Obama was elected and I want him to serve, whether he was born here or not. The fact is
you don't think he was born here, though?
I don't know if he is or not. I don't care. Is my point. I don't think it's important. I think there are more serious problems with presidents, whether they be Democrat or Republican, doing things that are far less constitutional than whether or not their mother gave birth to them on American soil. I think I'm much more.
He's a Muslim?
Is he a Muslim or not? Again, I believe Barack Obama himself when he writes in his book Lessons of My Father that he became a Christian at 29 years old under the auspices of the Reverend Jeremiah Wright, which is what he said, and I accept that. But
prior to that, what was he?
I don't think he was. I think he was probably not. According to his own writing, he didn't have much of a religious orientation at all before that. So,
all right, yeah,
and I believe that.
I think we agree on that.
Yeah, I think we do. And I think, again, there are more serious constitutional questions. I am more concerned with, for example, the fact that Barack Obama not only launched a war against Libya with missiles without any congressional oversight at all, and he only informed Congress a week after he started it. And then when Leon Panetta was asked about this in a congressional hearing, and why didn't you come to Congress, he said, well, we don't have to go to Congress. We were under the auspices of NATO. That to me is a more serious constitutional question than whether or not Barack Obama his mother was a day late in arriving in Hawaii and giving birth.
Yeah. No, you're making a really good point, Chuck, which is that for a long time now, military action by the U.S., and this, of course, applies to the unbelievable wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, has been of questionable legality. And, we agree on this issue, and we may even agree on drone strikes that have been going on.
Right.
My point right now is, the first, 2.5 years of the Obama presidency, my focus was on pointing out why he's not liberal enough and why he's not doing all the things he should and could be doing to further the progressive ideals. Right now, we're at a point, as you notice if you get our daily emails, where it's an election. It's either Romney or Obama right now. And
right.
I believe Romney would just be an utter disaster. Therefore, right now, the focus is on let's just get past the election and get Obama reelected. On November 7th, I promise you, I'm going right back to all the things President Obama should be doing that he's not. So we probably have some common ground there.
Well, we might, but I would just point out that since January 7th of 1941, when Franklin Roosevelt got a declaration of war from Congress, there has not been a declared war, and yet we've been involved in many wars, including Vietnam and Korea and whatnot. But the difference with Obama's Libyan incursion was that there was absolutely no congressional oversight, no congressional consultation whatsoever. At least with the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War, President Clinton got a resolution signed by Congress in November of 1998, which was the Iraq Liberation Act, which authorized him for regime change, and he started to bomb Iraq. And George Bush continued that policy. But the point is that those at least had some congressional oversight. There was a vote. And by the way, the vast majority of Democrats voted in favor of that in November of 1998. So my problem with the most recent incursion was there was no vote at all. There was no congressional consultation whatsoever. And that is unprecedented in terms of the amount of power that an executive has wielded. And I really feel concerned with that being a phenomena in a second Obama administration. I mean, I don't think Obama is a disaster as a president. I agree with a lot of things he's done, but this aspect of executive power without any congressional oversight is one that should concern all of us, left, right, and center. But anyway, David, we've reached the end of the segment. I've enjoyed it. Maybe we could do it again soon.
Thanks for having me.
All right, you bet. David Pakman, where can people listen to you?
DavidPakman.com. We're on DirecTV and Dish Network across the country. We're also on 155 radio and TV stations. You can also check out our YouTube channel, which is approaching 20 million views, an incredible milestone.
Way to go. All
Okay,
right,
thanks,
take
Chuck.
care. All right, thanks a lot.